Hi, folks. Thank you so much for joining us. I am really thrilled to be here with these four wonderful programs for neurodivergent students transitioning to college. We're going to be talking about gap year and postgraduate programs to help students become college ready. I am Eric Endlick. I am the founder of Top College Consultants. I'm a psychologist by profession and educational consultant working with students nationwide to help them become ready for college and apply to college, particularly students with learning differences, autism, ADHD, dyslexia, and the like, as well as emotional challenges. We have a great nationwide team, and we are excited to bring you this program. So let's jump right in. Sydney, do you want to tell us a bit about the programs that Landmark offers for students becoming
Sure.
college ready?
Sure. So hi, my name's Sydney Ruff, and I am the Director of Admissions at Landmark College, and I'm also an alumna. I'm proud to have dyslexia and ADHD, but that wasn't always the case. Thankfully, my parents helped me in choosing Landmark, and I've never regretted the choice. In fact, I think it's because of that choice that I'm in the position I am today. Before I get too far ahead of myself, I should just explain a little bit more about Landmark and then the transition program. So just real quickly, Landmark's a 4-year liberal arts program located in Putney, Vermont, and we're devoted exclusively to students who learn differently. There's both ways that we're traditional and also, not surprising, ways that we're very unique. And our curriculum is completely traditional and very rigorous. And we have a variety of different ways that students can engage with us. 11 associate and bachelor's degrees, and then some shorter term options as well, like the transition at college option, which is one of the reasons I'm here today. We call the transition at college option TAC for short. So that's what I'll be using when I describe it. So the TAC option is designed for students who need to develop their executive functioning skills. It's really ideal for students who have a primary diagnosis of ADHD, but that's not the requirement. And these students are often unsure if college is the right choice for them. So these students would also sometimes be described as not quite ready for college, or even wanting a slower transition from high school into the college experience. I know for me, I struggle with a lot of change and transition. So this would have been an ideal program for me. It just didn't exist when I was a student. The TAC track provides a lot of resources and opportunities for students to explore academic, social, and professional interests that help them develop a plan for their future, all while living on a college campus. So TAC students can take up to 18 credits in their first year. If they want, they don't have to, but that's the max that they can take for courses, which works out to be about 3 courses in the fall and then 3 in the spring. There's added residential life support. So the director of that program lives with the students and is also then their mentor as well. And so students will have both experiential and instructional programming activities that will focus on life skills and just overall development of independence. And then one element that is quite unique is the parent involvement of this program. So parents have an option where if their student is in TAC, they can expect a minimum of a once a month meeting with the director of the program that's one-on-one with them that can provide them an update on what their student is working on, what's been accomplished, and what is to be expected in the upcoming month. And all TAC students still have access to all of our other offerings on campus that any other student would have access to. So the class sizes are still the same and extremely small, around 8 to 12 students. And then all of our support is still there for them as well, mostly on a one-to-one basis. Our Drake Center for Academic Support, for example, is all staffed by faculty and professionals rather than peer tutors. Lastly, Landmark has another option that's slightly different and that is focused for students who have a primary diagnosis of autism. For those students, we have an early orientation program, which really helps students with the transition to campus. They work with our social pragmatics team over the summer to really help enhance both the students and the parents in their overall transition. And then we also have we have lots of different summer programs that can also assist in sort of the development, whether you're going on to college or needing a gap year in between. And there's different summer programs that have that opportunity. I look forward to answering any of your questions and speaking with you in the future.
Thanks so much, Sydney. And again, for anybody tuning in, please let us know where you're located. We'd love to find out who's out there. And also tell us a little about yourself. Do you have kids in high school or college? What grades are they in? And of course, we welcome your questions for our panelists. Kinsley, would you like to go next?
Sure.
Great.
Hi, I'm Kinsley Rausch-Dudzik. I'm from Franklin Academy, and I'm here to talk about the Franklin Learning Institute, which is our post-grad program. And it does also include some of what we consider like our super seniors, students who are have been in our program and are ready to make that next step in the next year or so to college. The campus itself is 8th grade through post-grad, but the FLY program is fairly separate. The students live in satellite dormitories where they have kitchens, washers and dryers. They navigate that as if they were in college. And that's really the purpose of the FLY program. It's a simulation of the first year of college. And we think of it as preparation through practice. They have a college schedule. They have an advisor who they meet with regularly. They may take early college experience courses, which are offered through UConn, but they're given on our campus by teachers who have been vetted and trained to deliver their curriculum. They have a lot of opportunity for independence and taking on more responsibilities, not only on campus, but also through internships in the local community. And our school is geared for those students who are unique learners. They tend to have deficits in the areas of social cognition, executive functioning, emotional regulation, and either self-care or self-advocacy. So our educational model is very different as you go through the high school. And students do have some exposure to that on the FLY program, which is how we refer to the Franklin Learning Institute. There's a lot of accommodations that are naturally built into the program in terms of length of day, start time, just having longer periods of time to complete certain tasks. And we also include in that, though, not only their applied courses, but then a set of courses that also very explicitly look at acquisition, critical thinking, and communication, which are really important skills for lifelong learning. And it also includes a class called CORE that's part of our individual and community program. We are very much a community-based program that really works on creating a sense of community and team. There on FLY are usually anywhere between 22 and 30 students. The dorms they live in range in size from 4 to 12. Their classes range in size from 6 to 11 or 12. And they typically take 5 classes, 2 applied or 3 applied, and then 2 or 3 of the preparation for college or reading or writing for college and careers. We are dedicated to helping kids really get to know themselves and understand their strengths and weaknesses so that they know what they need, what works for them effectively, and they know how to communicate that to the people they need to get what they need, and to really understand that process. After 2 semesters, we have a period of 5 weeks where they focus more on service, really honing some college social skills and passion projects. We are unique and we do look at things a little differently. For instance, we have an explicit class that teaches executive functioning, emotional regulation, social cognition, and that they'll get assignments in, like they may have to make an appointment with somebody that they've been assigned to and spend some time with them socially, or they may have to set up for some office hours, and those kinds of things would then also be skills that we're asking them to use outside of that particular class that they're practicing it in. And we're able to use the whole day as an opportunity to practice and get feedback on those skills. Our kids do a wide variety of things, and in the end, really have a very clear idea of where they want to go and what they need to be successful in meeting their goals, and how to set those goals and work their way towards them.
Great, thank you. So my colleague Ayako just joined us. Hi, Ayako. We're going around and having the panelists describe their programs, and then we'll jump into specific questions for them. Again, for viewers, we'd love to hear where you're located. If you have children in high school or college, what years they're in, and then of course any questions you have for the panelists. So let's go on. John, would you like to introduce yourself and tell folks about your college transition and preparation programs?
Sure. Hi everyone. I'm John Savita. I'm Director of Transition Programming for the Winston Preparatory School. I've been with Winston Prep for about 20 years now. And about 11 years ago, I was asked to develop transitions here in New York for Winston Prep. And now we've just launched same program, Winston Transitions, in San Francisco. So we've been running Winston Transitions here in New York for the past 10 years. Transitions really, the way that I've always envisioned it, and by design, is really an all-encompassing life program. Thinking about kind of 3 main areas in relationship to growth and development for our students. So we have our academic components of the program. We're also a day program, just to be clear about that as well.
Excuse me, John, I can hear you, but it's a little faint. I don't know if you can move a little closer to the microphone. That's great. Thanks.
Okay, that's better. Sorry about that.
Thanks.
Okay, cool. So we have 3 main components or buckets, if you will, that we look to fill with our students in relationship to their growth and development as independent, emerging young adults. So the academic piece of the program is really focused on skill development, so skill acquisition in relationship to we're still engaging our students in curriculum such as math, but from a really practical application approach. So financial literacy as being a primary area of skill development, language arts, reading comprehension development, writing skills, overall communication, problem solving, critical thinking. So the acquisition of those skills in relationship to that. We've designed a course called Professional Studies, which is very much centered around the idea of exploration into career development and soft skills and the acquisition of hard skills as well. But again, thinking about communication, skill development, problem solving, critical thinking, taking initiative. And that also kind of dovetails and connects to our comprehensive internship program. That is a really essential part of the work that we're doing at Transitions. Our students are in internships typically 2 days a week in a myriad of different opportunities. So we look at our internship program from an employability skill building perspective. Many of our students will go to college post our program, but when we're thinking about kind of the larger scheme of our students' lives, we have to think beyond higher education and into the world of employment, and thinking about the skills that are going to be really important in relationship to sustainability in the workplace. And again, those soft skills, those building relationships, taking initiative, developing leadership skills, and again, having a greater sense of communication and awareness of one's strengths and weaknesses in relationship to how that plays into the workplace. We've also, identified over the years that many of the skills that we're working towards in development for preparation for college are also equally as important in preparation for employment and sustainability employment. Winston, in general, for all of Winston campuses, the middle school, the high school, the elementary grades, we have designed, along with the National School Climate Center, what's called the qualities of a sustainable and independent learner. And there are 8 dimensions to that. There are 8 skills that are associated with that. It's resilience, social responsibility, self-advocacy, self-regulation, self-reflection, problem solving, social communication skills, and management and organization. At Transitions, we're working with from a neuropsychological paradigm of student profiles. We're typically working with language processing, nonverbal processing, and the overlapping of executive functioning difficulties. So there is a wide range of learning abilities and learning profiles that are in our program, and we're highly individualized. So we're able to tailor and deliver instruction from a very practical application approach and a very project-based approach to a wide range of individuals. Our focus program is the third component of Winston Transitions and a hallmark of all of Winston Prep programming. That's really kind of the central point of communication. We do feel very much so that this is really one of the last chances that our families will have in relationship to having that deep connection to your child's experience in an educational environment, an employment environment, and from a social emotional perspective in regards to growth and development. There's a heavy amount of communication that's happening between the focus teacher, the team in general, the academic team, the internship department team, and again, really positioning our students in the driver's seat of their lives, right? So that we're positioning our students to develop this greater sense of awareness, this deeper understanding of what their needs are in relationship to their own growth and development. And that focus team is primarily staffed with mental health professionals. And we're working around that social emotional growth and development, goal setting, problem solving. Again, that advocacy piece, right? Taking charge of your life, but being able to identify and having strong self-reflective abilities and the ability to self-regulate. Many of our students will struggle with self-regulation. And without self-reflection, without self-regulation, advocacy can break down. And then ultimately, resilience will break down. So there's this interrelation between all of the skills that we're talking about and delivering. And it really becomes a language that our kids use, not only in higher education and academics, but in the workplace and in their relationships. We also do have a partnership with Landmark, a longstanding partnership with Landmark through their dual enrollment program, where students are taking asynchronous coursework through our program with support around executive functioning strategies and skill building through our focus program. And we really view that as an assessment tool in relationship to identifying the appropriate next steps for our students in college setting and again beyond.
Thanks, John,
Great.
for that reminder.
Thanks so much. I'm going to have Shannon speak in a moment, but we already have a question from one of our viewers. How do you support independent living skills within your programs? So I'm going to let folks think about that while Shannon is speaking, so you'd be ready to jump in. So let's hear about Middlebridge and your postgraduate program.
Absolutely. I'm Shannon Leventhal. I'm the Director of Admissions for Middlebridge School. I'm a founding staff member for Middlebridge, so I've been with this program and community for about 15 years now, which is pretty fantastic. We have a really wonderful, small postgraduate program at Middlebridge School. We are a boarding and day program for students with learning differences from all across the country and the world. And our postgraduate program is even a little bit smaller than our high school program, in that we usually enroll anywhere between a dozen to 17 postgraduate students per year. What I would say is incredibly unique about our program is that there is no one postgraduate program that looks like another. So when we talk about individualization, each postgraduate student's program may look different than another postgraduate student. But there are three main program components. So we are in beautiful Narragansett, Rhode Island. We are close to organizations like the University of Rhode Island, the Community College of Rhode Island, the Rhode Island School of Design. And we have some wonderful working relationships with those organizations so that our students can take college classes either for credit or to audit the classes as a part of their postgraduate experience. We also are lucky to have more than 50 internship partners in the area, in everything from early childhood education to local real estate offices, internships at the University of Rhode Island, so that our students can either come into the postgraduate program with a sense of what it is that might be valuable or meaningful for them to have an internship experience, and so that they can establish with an internship partner and really be a part of that business and organization as part of their postgraduate experience. But we also have, with more than 50 businesses on the list, the opportunity for our students to explore. I think for so many of our postgraduate students, part of what they are exploring is, what is my major going to be in college? What is it that I want to do with my life? And so the internship program allows them an opportunity to try a couple of different avenues. And then we are a specialty program, so every single student gets executive function and metacognitive coaching with a one-on-one tutor every single day. And then we offer an emotional intelligence class that is really titrated towards our graduating seniors and our postgraduate students, that talks about developing, sort of the emotional skills, the resiliency, the community building skills that our students will really need as they leave us and head on to college programs. So an incredibly unique program, definitely a small one, I think, relative to some of the other programs that are here with us, which is a nice counterpoint.
Great. Thanks, Shannon. Mm-hmm. And I have questions. I'm guessing Ayako has questions, but the questions from the participants are piling up, so I want to jump into those. Ayako, do you want to say anything by way of introduction before we go on to the questions? Oh, you're muted. There we go.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Hello, my name is Ayako Linus. I'm also a college counselor that works with Eric. And it's a pleasure to see you all today and be a part of this conversation.
Thanks.
Right.
And Ayako also has training as a journalist, so I'm sure she'll be great with questions and staying on top of the conversation. So one of the first question that came up, and we've got three already. I don't know if folks can respond in the chat too, but first question, how do you support independent living skills within your programs? Who would like to speak to that?
I could jump in. First, the way our kids are living in satellite dorms does lend itself to that. Aside from getting explicit instruction in some of those self-care skills in the core class, they also will have weekly dorm meetings with their group and two advisors that are on their team and working with that house, because the same people that work with them in the classroom or as their advisor, the learning specialist counselor or residential dean, they are also the people that are there working with them at night on the weekends. So they know each other very, very well. And there, sometimes they'll do some of that more individual work on, like, how do you do laundry, cooking, those kinds of things. And then those activities are built into our weekend activities into that class, so that we're giving the kids a lot of opportunity to practice them and also to get feedback on how well they're performing those tasks and strategies that might help them improve those skills.
Great. Anybody else want to touch on this question?
I can.
Great.
So one of the ways that we support the independent living skills and sort of the instruction behind it is just, again, similar to what was previously said, is just the location of where these students are living, in that they're a part of a residence hall that is a part of our first year experience residence hall too. But in this cohort of TAC, the director of the program is also there living with them directly and having both one-on-one meetings as well as group meetings that are focused more on the residential life of things. They can certainly support everything else that the student is doing outside of the residence halls, but this does give a lot more flexibility and a lot more access to understanding the student and what might be impacting them outside of what we would deem as traditional, academic experiences on campus. And part of these conversations are really tailored to what the student is needing, getting into the fine tooth areas around what is something that we need to develop. And so it's not so much that every student in the class needs to learn this particular component, but it's what do they need that we can then address directly with them. And that's then addressed by a scaffolding approach, where we give students a lot of that support from the beginning and then let go some of that support over time, with the idea that the student is then in a position of power, being able to put the support back in when they need it and let go of it again, so that they're kind of seeing that from the very beginning. And I should also mention that all of the sort of, different components, different offices that are working with these students are also working as a team. And that team is always directed to the student. So the student is never fearing that that conversations are being had without them, because we see that as a very important element for a student to really understand advocacy and understand the way that they learn best by being a part of these conversations.
Great, thanks.
I can jump in as from a day program perspective.
Sure.
I think for us, it's looking at it in regards to readiness for an independent living environment, right? And thinking about what are the essential skills, that our students will need. So you have your practical, everyday kind of living skills, from cooking and cleaning and folding laundry, and all those things are incredibly important, and hygiene, and a lot of that. So much of that for us is built into the day program aspect of our health and wellness program. Or, as I was saying before, in regards to like math from a very practical application approach, thinking about independent living skills in relationship to financial literacy. Since we're located in the heart of New York City, and now in our campus in the city in San Francisco, being able to go out into the community and really practice these skills in a real world environment has been very beneficial for many of our students, because we're getting students from the tri-state area and in the Bay Area, coming from different parts of the Bay Area as well. Thinking about that commuting piece and being able to navigate public transportation. In New York City, we've had kids coming in from Westchester, from Long Island, from Connecticut, from New Jersey, all taking mass transit to get in. And then also in relationship to their internships, learning how to navigate public transportation and getting around and doing that on an independent level, I think has been incredibly valuable. In a lot of cases, that commuting piece has been kind of the impetus for that, that real thrust into independence, and providing our students, no matter where they're going to end up living in their lives, with that kind of, I guess, thinking about, New York City in particular, if you can make it there, you can make it anywhere kind of attitude, and using that perspective moving forward. And it's really been that kind of first thrust into a more independent perspective of themselves, and confidence builder.
Cool. And Ayako, you're welcome to, make observations or ask follow-up questions at any point too.
Yeah, I do have one question. So right now is a time when some families are trying to decide whether or not to take a gap year or do a transition program. When is the good time to be thinking about applying to attend your programs, especially during the year? Is this a good time, or does it fill up quickly?
Great question. Yeah. I mean, I could jump in again. I've always come at this from the perspective of earlier the better.
Mm-hmm.
To identifying transition planning, right?
We've got folks with seniors here.
What was that?
I said we have folks with juniors as well as seniors.
And quite honestly, transition planning can happen even way before that. It doesn't mean that individual has to stay on that trajectory, right? Even if you're identifying as a parent, I'm a parent myself, by the way, of 3 kids, 2 of which that have learning challenges. And one of my sons, who is currently in college now, spent a year at transitions last year. And it was, and my wife and I, when we were viewing that and seeing his twin brother go off to college, making that determination that he needed more time was something that we thought about much earlier on in his academic career, in relationship to his next steps in the comparison to his twin brother, who was neurotypical and moving off in a more traditional pathway. But anyway, thinking about that, and identifying readiness, and making those determining factors doesn't have to be written in stone necessarily. But again, if we're identifying this, what I've found over the years of doing this is sometimes when we wait too long to introduce this concept to our child, and if we're waiting sometimes in the 11th hour, and the buy-in for that new pathway can be really challenging, and there might be a tremendous amount of pushback saying, well, my peers are moving forward, why aren't I moving forward in a more traditional pathway? My siblings have moved forward, you move forward, why aren't I doing that? So early, to me, I think from just experience can really make a difference, in kind of softening, or massaging in that idea in a more successful way.
I think that's a great point. I find students aren't always, don't necessarily have this idea from the get-go, I'm going to take a gap year. So introducing that and having them start to think about, college readiness and all the pieces that go into that, can be really helpful. And they may not make that final decision until senior year or the application, but thinking about it over time can be helpful. Well, what would you do during that gap year? What would be the focus? What do you need to be working on? Which then, of course, drives the choice of how you spend that gap year.
Yeah, I think one of the things that's really important for parents and students to talk about, and my oldest is on the spectrum, probably the other two too, they have ADHD. And what I found is that when you really talk to them about, how do you feel about your ability to manage yourself, just in a day-to-day basis, or advocate for something that you need, do you know what kind of resources you might need, or have they been demonstrating the ability to organize themselves so that they are, getting enough sleep and getting up. And when you start to have those conversations and get them thinking about how are they assessing themselves, and then offering them that opportunity to say, you can take the time you need, especially after COVID, we want to give you the time that you need to feel prepared for that next step so that you feel successful, and to give them those questions to think about. And also reminding them that they can go through the process to apply if they feel like they're ready in that sense and they want to have something in their back pocket, because you can always defer for a year. And I think it's important for kids to know that and understand that they have options and they're the driver.
Great. The questions are piling up. So if there isn't an urgent comment on it, we can go on. Anyone else want to jump in before we go on to the next question? So,
Eric, I think that touches on one of the questions as well. What was about that just popped in?
oh, okay. You want to, this one?
Let's see. Yes, let's see. Yes. So Robin on the Facebook has asked about, I'll just read the question. Is my family lives in LA. I have a 17-year-old TUI son who attends a large public high school, and he's wrapped up his college applications and already has some acceptances. Planned on considering a gap year after receiving the acceptances to give him an extra year to catch up. And because he's on the younger side. And that being said, I'm concerned that if he does a gap year, it means waiting a whole year and he may lose his momentum. What do you think about that? And then what is that something to be concerned about?
I can jump in again. Sorry, Kenzie, did you want to jump?
No, it's okay, but yes, because this is an important one.
Yeah, no,
There's a question up on the screen. It sort of, well, no, I guess you can see it.
I think ultimately, yeah, no,
waiting a year and losing momentum, and
yeah, I think ultimately, you know, it's about, you know, what kind of gap year experiences is they, you know, are they going to have? You know, gap years or transition. I don't necessarily consider what we do a gap year. It's really a comprehensive, you know, program with a lot of structure and a lot of support. And it sounds like, you know, all of the opportunities that exist on this panel are that, right? That we have these very specific programs in place. There's a structure, there's support, there's all of these things that are engaging in that. So the loss of momentum, if anything, from I would imagine from all of our perspectives, it should increase momentum. You know, that it should really provide a much more stable foundation and launch pad for greater success moving into whatever opportunity that your child chooses from the, you know, the acceptances that he's already gained.
Yeah,
that's really how I've always viewed it. It's really that foundation builder. It's not by any means a loss of time, nor is it a loss of experience. It builds that. If anything, I think kids coming out of programs that are offering these types of supports, like we are, again, they're in some ways almost ahead of their peers. Yeah,
you're right. They absolutely are, and that's what our alums come back and tell us. I would say that the statistics are actually quite scary. All students that go off to college at year 5, I think it's between 60 and 70% have received a degree. For students who have a learning difference of some kind or a neurodiverse issue, they are that number jumps down to somewhere between 35 and 40%. And it's not until year 6 that we get up to just about 60% of those kids who've actually earned a degree. I think what that tells us is that it is far more important to take it a little more slowly and practice before you go than it is to go and experience what the student feels is a huge failure because they didn't make it. Because most of the things that get in their way don't have anything to do with academics or their passion. They have to do with, you know, they couldn't manage themselves and they didn't understand how to advocate for what they needed, or they, for some reason, thought that advocating for what they needed made them stand out in a way that would hurt them socially, which is not the case in college.
If I could also add, we get a lot of calls from families with very similar answers or questions. And, you know, do they really need Landmark, or are they okay somewhere else? Or should we be exploring another program entirely? And one of the suggestions that I make is for the family to come up with a list of everything that they do for the student from start to finish of every day. And then for the student to come up with a list of everything that they do from start to finish of every day. And if you want to really go the extra mile, you can have someone at the school possibly do a similar list of everything that the school does for the student. And what I find is you bring your list together, and it's a really great opportunity to have a conversation about what can we transition over onto the students list. And over a period of time, you'll then be able to assess if there were certain things that couldn't get over onto the students list. That tells you that that's something that you should be looking for in a program. And I think, that might change. Like, you might have a lot of programs that are really, you think are the best right now, but maybe from this practice, you learn that there's a lot of other things that might impact that experience first that need to be addressed before we add those components on. So I find that to be a really good just exercise for a family. It doesn't need to be shared with anyone else, but it creates a more specific topics to discuss, rather than just saying, should I go to this program, or should I go into college, or are we going to lose an opportunity, to a much more concrete conversation around what all of that could mean and what it could look like for them.
Thanks.
I think also, I'm sorry, Eric, just one other quick
go ahead.
about that. Nationally, the average age of a college graduate is 27 years old. So thinking about, that ticking clock, and we all get caught up in everything has to happen in a linear trajectory, and it's not really the case by any means. It's about doing it, I think, to everybody's point in this conversation, doing it when you're ready, and doing it when it's right, and when you're in the right environment and the right skill, the right supports and readiness is in place.
I'd love to add just sort of, tying some of the themes that folks have brought up. But, with regards to momentum, I think there's incredible value in having that conversation with students that are considering a postgraduate program, of what they would identify as continuing to build momentum, for a gap year experience. Number one, it gives them an excellent opportunity to identify what's really important to them over the course of the next year. And that's a great exercise in having that conversation, both with themselves and with their parents. But it also allows students and families to really titrate what it is that they're looking for in that gap year. Is it college credits? Is it a sense of independence? Is it living on their own? Is it an internship experience? Is it resume building? You have these amazing programs that let you do, one or all of those things. But having students go through that discussion process and that exploration process senior year is incredibly valuable. As you're experiencing the gap year, you are creating momentum for where you go the year after.
Thanks. Yeah, I think there's sort of this all of you sort of alluded to this. There's this sort of assumption that if a child goes straight to college, they're going to graduate in 4 years. Not only is that not necessarily typical of students in general, never mind neurodivergent students, but if a student is not ready for college, it could be really a devastating experience if they have to leave in the middle of their college experience. In fact, that's one of the reasons why I became an educational consultant, because I had seen as a psychologist students who went on to college, they weren't ready, they weren't going to colleges where they were adequately supported. And I think it's great that you have programs like the ones that you all provide to help students build up those skills, so that when they do start, even if it is a year later or whenever it is, that they have a better chance of succeeding and graduating. I also put a link in the chat before of an article I wrote on benefits of gap years, because contrary to what a lot of people might fear, the statistics really support that students who take gap years do better in college in terms of graduation rates, GPAs, knowing what they want to do, getting more out of college.
Eric, it looks like there's a couple of questions. One I'm going to kind of paraphrase is about if your program teams up with a college, how do the colleges perceive those students, and what's the track? There's a little confusion about if you take college if you're allowed to take college credits. while you are doing a gap year. And some people are there's a comment about AP classes, so we might need to clarify what that
Right.
means
So
towards
there's a couple of questions. So you're pulling from a couple of the questions, Ayako,
yeah.
right? Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
surrounded about the college and how, if you were going to after the gap year or the post-secondary program, if you were going to go to apply to a college, are you allowed to take these classes at the college? Also, and somebody's asking, do you have AP classes? So I think there's a little bit of clarification on that.
Sure. Both of those sort of touch on similar issues.
I'm happy to jump in there. So our students in the postgraduate program are eligible to take college classes for credit at local organizations. But we do also have students who have been accepted to colleges and choose to defer for a year. And so they might choose to simply audit classes as opposed to taking college classes for credit. So, when we talk about individualized paths, it really depends on the student. We equally have students that will come to us for a postgraduate year, and they will take that year to go through the college search process. And so for those students, they might find greater value in taking college classes for credit. And then we also have students who have been accepted to colleges and deferred. And so their particular college might say, hey, we find value in you taking college classes and having that experience. But you may wish to simply audit the class as opposed to taking those college classes for credits and trying to transfer them. So a lot of it depends on, how the student is coming into the postgraduate program. But we've equally had students that have, transferred as few as, one college class for credit. And then I've got kids that will leave this year and are taking with them 15 to 18 college credits.
Great. Thank you.
It was the same for us too in regards to the partnership with Landmark. Students are earning credit for those courses through the dual enrollment program. And to date, they've, whether a student is going to Landmark, we've had students go to Landmark post our program. But if they're going to any college, those credits have been transferable. So that's, been a nice, again, not that credit acquisition is the main goal, because it's more about the skill, the acquisition of skills. But it is nice for the students to be able to earn those credits and transfer those credits, and also, from their own perspective, not feeling so far behind. We've had students leave with anywhere from 6 to 12 credits to college, and be able to apply those successfully. But again, more importantly, having the skills and the readiness to, and the understanding to do that successfully.
The classes that the students take at Landmark as a part of the TAC offering are fully transferable. I mean, it is up to the transferring institution typically to accept those credits, but they fall in line with what might be expected for an intro to psychology course or any level of a writing course. And so as far as other colleges interpreting what that might look like, I think there's a concern that we've heard from others around is there skepticism around where the student currently is and how that might impact that traditional setting. And I think because our program is accredited as well, that helps because it creates that standard means to assess if this is, a similar class to something that their college might already have.
Thanks. And I think colleges increasingly are recognizing the value of gap years and encouraging students to take a gap year, even though it means that's going to be another year before they get that tuition. They know that students are going to be more likely to be focused and graduate and do well in college. So a number of colleges, there are colleges that are even giving students financial incentives to take a gap year. And not too many colleges have a gap year, except for Landmark, of course, on campus. I do have one student this year who is doing a gap year program at another college that's not on the panel, but that's not typical. Seems like we might have lost Kinsley. You're back. Yeah. One of the questions was that I think we were touching on. I'm not sure we addressed this aspect of the question, which was whether there's coursework for students who are gifted, twice exceptional students who not only have learning differences, but are also gifted. Are these students going to be, how are these students going to do at your programs? And I thought, Kinsley, you might be able to speak to that.
Yeah, I would actually say that most of our students are 2E gifted, but we offer not only the college experience courses that they earn UConn credits for, but we also have an honors program, and our series of applied courses are really fabulously exciting, because what we found is content is less relevant than the skills that you need to be successful. So they get a lot of opportunities to follow their passions. They can do it in honors. There's college classes, and they can do independent studies if they have a really deep passion. For students who, for instance, excel in math, we go through multivariable calculus and beyond, but then occasionally we have a student that needs to take courses at Wesleyan, and our math chair works that out, and that student can go there to get their math.
Great. There's another question we haven't tackled yet, and that is about the mental health. And of course, this is something that's coming up across the board in high school, in college. This is sure not going to be a new concern to any of you, the mental health issues for teens, particularly around the pandemic, have just skyrocketed. So,
can I jump in just in case?
Yeah, absolutely.
Every one of our teams, and that includes Fly, has a counselor embedded on the team who helps to teach that core class. So they're working on those social emotional skills, but students can also meet with that counselor weekly. Everybody on our staff is trained to use the Yale Ruler program and CBT and some DBT. So people really are prepared to help. Every person on a student's team would be ready to jump in to help a student manage their anxiety.
I think.
Okay.
Sorry, did I overstep?
No, go. I'll jump in after you. Go.
Okay, thank you. So at Landmark, the counseling offering is available to any student, and that is available once a week. And it's a really robust counseling team that we work with. So that certainly handles one side of just a student feeling like they have a confidential source on campus where they might be able to process. And that's really nice to have that reassurance going into what can be a very anxious part of a student's life when they're determining where to go. But I think that really starts, at least for Landmark, from the very beginning, from the very first time that you engage with us. I think anxiety is so prevalent to what many are struggling with that we've just had to change a lot of our systems that way. And so we have a lot of communication with families and students before we even get to meet them on campus. And so part of that is often taking things in baby steps, or asking the family or student how they like to work with us, whether that's giving them a heads up on what will be discussed in our meeting, or giving them a heads up as far as what they can expect when they come to campus. So much of the anxiety is something that it really does take just the added connection to someone on campus. And then most favorite component of our support is our 9 therapy dogs on campus. And the therapy dogs are so wonderful, because it's amazing from that first interaction with the dog how significantly less a student will become anxious, and it allows us to work with them much faster than what we might have been able to had we tried any of our other approaches. So students can work with our therapy dogs, either taking them out for a walk, or they can do group activities with them. One of them is a favorite in one of the residence halls, and so we bring them in first thing in the morning, and we find that's the biggest motivator to get kids up in the morning. So there's a lot of different ways that Landmark kind of helps support this, but it's certainly something that if you wanted to talk more about, I think like anyone on this panel would probably be very open to having a conversation so that we could get into a little bit more detail on how we could best support whatever is happening to ensure that the anxiety is something that doesn't have to be as big of a deterrent for, taking on new initiatives.
Yes, anxiety is prevalent. I mean, obviously, to Eric's point, post-pandemic, or not that we're completely over with the pandemic, obviously, but, I just thinking about our students in general, emerging into adulthood is, a very complex time, whether you're neurodivergent or neurotypical, it's always complex. As I was describing before in relationship to our program, our focus program, which is our one-to-one programming at Transitions, is staffed with mental health professionals, clinical social workers, and really thinking about, and they're meeting with these individuals anywhere from 2 to 3 times a week for 45 to 50-minute sessions. We're not a substitution for therapy, but we are, very well trained and adept at cognitive behavioral therapy and strategies within that. And just really helping our students reframe their thinking around complex situations that they're going to engage in, from both an academic standpoint and a social perspective, right? I mean, we're thinking about our kids as, these whole individuals, and there's all these different parts of their lives and how they're navigating that. And for so many of them, leaving adolescence and the comforts of that and it's to be really frightening. So we want to make sure that, again, we're building in these high levels of communication, these high levels of problem solving and critical thinking around where their concerns and where their anxiety and frustration are stemming from, and then helping them frame that in a way that's, much more steeped in a rational thought pattern in relationship to their lives and their experiences. So that's a really important part of everything that we do from an instructional standpoint. But it's not isolated to these sessions. It's, I think the way that we've always approached this is this concert of messaging and consistency of messaging in relationship to the strategies and the skills that are going to work for each individual in relationship to how they're dealing with the complexities of their lives.
Thank you. We've touched on a lot of important questions here, big questions, but before we run out of time, I want to make sure we address the practical as well. College is just very expensive these days. Paying for college is a big concern for a lot of families. So in terms of paying an additional year for a gap year, I think that can be a factor for families. Not just does my child need to take this time to become college ready, but is this going to be like paying for another year of college? So anything that families should be aware of in terms of funding besides self-pay?
Well, I mean, there's district funding. About 40% of our student body is funded by their district, because many districts are required, for some of our kids are required to provide services through the age of 21. There are also, we do offer a limited number of residential scholarships up to $10,000 a piece. And the other thing that there are some states will let you use part of the like college saving programs for our programs. And then there are tax benefits that you can get. But it varies from state to state, and you have to talk to your tax lawyer.
Great. Thanks.
I'll jump in there as well. We definitely have had, as Kinsley mentioned, we've got folks that are funded by their school districts. And all that I would add to that is that there are a network of really exceptional educational advocates and lawyers out there. I know that Middlebridge maintains a list of some of the folks that we've worked with that have been successful in securing funding for families. And I'm sure that all the folks on this panel probably maintain a similar list. So as families are looking for funding sources, just sort of recognizing that there are additional resources to support them in that process of securing funding. is definitely useful.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm going to echo the same, Shannon and Kinsley in relationship to funding. Many of our families are getting funding from the local school districts by taking legal action. As Kinsley said, our children are entitled to a fair and appropriate education until the age of 21. Many of our students for transitions in New York, typically, well, not typically, but many of them come in without a high school diploma, which continues to keep that funding mechanism open. And then we are accredited under the Winston Preparatory School, so we are able to issue diplomas post completion of our program, if that's the situation that our students are finding themselves in, but also I think to Kinsley's point too, I think it's a fairly recent construct of being able to use 529s in relation to the transition program. So many of our families have been able to do that as well, and there are tax incentives and there is financial aid packets that can be figured out along with families and from a financial perspective.
This is Ayako. I just wanted to add a little clarifying what was just mentioned about funding from districts. This is if your student has an individualized education program through the school district. You naturally in high school, you start making a transition plan. So at that point, depending on the discussions, you may have extended services past finishing high school courses, or you may have an extended high school journey. So these discussions about these kinds of programs will come up during that process in the individualized education program. It's also differs a little bit state by state. So the best thing to do is talk to your district about how things work if you do have a case manager and you're working with the team.
And you shouldn't be afraid to do that. I had a student about 5 years ago who did not get diagnosed until her senior year, towards the end of her senior year in high school. And they did end up paying for 3 transition years, a 3-year program for her because they hadn't met her needs.
Eric, you're muted.
Yes, sorry. Any last thoughts? There's so much we could cover, but I don't want to overstay our welcome. You've been so generous with your time. Any last comments anyone wants to make? Well, I really appreciate all you joining us. I hope folks can feel they can reach out to you if they do have questions about your program. Were you going to say something, Kinsley?
No, I was just going to say thank you all for coming.
Yes, thanks.
And please do reach out. We're here to help. Thanks
to our panelists. Thanks to all the folks who came in with questions and comments. And I can link you to any of the panelists if for some reason you don't remember who was on the panel or know how to get in touch with them. So thanks again for your participation. This has been great.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, this was great. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you so much, Eric.